Good evening, folks. Welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. I'm your host, Marcus, and without getting into too much of anything, I want you to take a good look at your screen. Tonight's episode is going to be more about competitive nature and integrity of the game than anything else. I don't mean to go on a rant or tangent, but that's probably what I'm getting ready to do, and I'm going to keep it as short as I possibly can without getting too emotional. But one thing that is suffering in the NBA right now is competitiveness and the integrity of the game, which is completely and 100% compromised at this point. The trade deadline and buyout market just recently passed, and some moves were made. I'll talk about other moves in just a moment, but I want to focus on this team right here. Walking into this season, they already had Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. They would later trade for James Harden, making it ridiculous to think that they would not come out of the East. They had so much firepower. Joe Harris is a knockdown three-point shooter and is not necessarily a defensive liability, but we won't talk about his defense because it's not all the way there. DeAndre Jordan, he is a defensive anchor. While not athletically gifted as he once was, time has taken that away from him, but he is still a really good player. Bruce Brown, they are just scratching the surface on what this kid could be. Jeff Green is a Swiss Army knife of a player. He can get you whatever you want and play multiple positions. Blake Griffin just came to them in the buyout market. He was dogging it in Detroit. He did not want to be there, and his play showed so. And it was disgusting to watch, if I must say so myself. I was disappointed in everything that he was doing. LaMarcus Aldridge just got to Brooklyn. He was bought out by the Spurs. And now he is also joining the Brooklyn Nets. Nicholas Claxton is one of the draft picks, and he will be coming along alongside Bruce Brown. My problem with this is 5 of these players are former and current All-Stars. 3 of those players are still playing at league MVP levels. Kevin Durant is currently not playing right now. They said he's hurt. He's not hurt. They're just keeping him fresh for the playoffs. That's all they're doing because they don't need him to play right now. Simply with James Harden and Kyrie Irving, this team is being taken to the playoffs. Presuming that, I'm just going to say, let's just say they beat the Lakers in the finals. They're going to win in less than 5. And they're going to win in 6 games. It's not going 7 games. Kevin Durant can literally not play, and they're still going to win. As a matter of fact, you could take Kevin and Kyrie out of this lineup. The mix of these players is still favored to win the title. Too much depth. Both Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge can give you 15 and 8 off the bench. And on a random night, either of them, maybe both of them, could get you somewhere between 25 and 30 points, 10 to 15 boards, just because they're capable of doing it. They're playing at a sub-all-star level, but in Brooklyn, they don't have to play at that high level. They don't have to. They're not being asked to. But they have it in them because now they're in the place they want to be. They're ring chasing. Say what you want to about where the game is as far as the business is concerned. It's healthy. It's about as healthy as it's ever been. They're making more money than they ever had before. They're saying that super teams have been good for the league's revenue. Great. It's all about money. Hooray. Who cares? Not me. I watch basketball to see competition. I like defense. I like seeing offense play as well. But what I like to see is I like to see every team be competitive. I don't like to see the best players teaming up. I want to see them go at each other. Now, on this particular subject, people have a tendency to bring up LeBron James this and LeBron James that and what he did with the Heat. Okay, fine. Fair or unfair doesn't make a difference. He did set a negative precedent. This is negative trend at him and the Miami Heat, my Miami Heat, but not necessarily the team. Because the team's job is to get the best players. I get that part of it. Get the best players possible and win a championship. That's the team's job. That's what they're supposed to do. That's the goal. The way this super team was brought about was flagrant. It was bad. Years before LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh formed the Big Three in Miami, they were talking about the possibility of playing together. And they decided, well, we're all going to be free agents in this certain year. Let's all do it then. Let's go to the same place. That has never been done before in NBA history up until that point. At least no one knew about it because it wasn't being publicized at the very least. Media wasn't as, as ever present as it, is now. It's unfortunate. This negative trend was set and everyone's just following it. What made it worse is that Kevin Durant, a few years later, would leave Oklahoma City and go to the team that beat him, the Oklahoma City Thunder, would lose him to the Golden State Warriors. That team, before Kevin Durant joined them, won 73 out of 82 games, then beat Kevin Durant's team in the Western Finals, to which Kevin's team had a 3-1 lead in a 7-game series. They only had to get one more game. He joined the team that beat him. That sucked the soul out of everybody. Competitive nature, gone. Integrity, compromised. It was a foregone conclusion. Warriors go to the finals next year. Warriors win. And that's what happened for 2 straight years. There was no competitive nature to the game anymore. LeBron James knew good and well that he couldn't do anything about that because he was in Cleveland at this point. He got his title, but he couldn't do it again. The deck was stacked entirely too high. Everyone says, well, what do? You try your best to build your new team. Players can't really build the teams, honestly. That's what the GM is for. So everyone likes to say LeBron is the GM and LeBron does this and LeBron controls this and he does that. No, he doesn't. He's a player and they consult him. Why? Because when your cornerstone player is the reason that you're as good as you are, you have to talk to him. You have to run it by him at the very least. Let him know what's going on. Keep your best asset happy because he's the reason that you have this position. The reason you're in the position to win is because of that one person. So you run it by them. Let them know what's going on. He doesn't have to sign off on it. Just let them know. That's what they do. At the end of the day, the GM, president of basketball operations, has to make that call. Now, as far as the idea of super teams always being around, they've always been around. The Showtime Lakers was nothing short of a super team. Okay? What do you want me to tell you? It's always been a thing. The way they come together is different, though. Like I said, the way the Miami Heat came together that year was flagrantly negative. It was bad for everything. That set this new trend into motion. But what I'm really disappointed in is, again, the competitive nature of the game has been compromised. For some reason, I don't know why, but nobody wants to say, you know what? I mean, okay, you know what? I'm not going to say nobody because this is why I love Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's in Milwaukee. The last championship that was won in Milwaukee, the 2 players that were there were Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson. And there hasn't been a championship there since. After they won that championship, Kareem joined the Lakers, solidifying them as the Showtime Lakers all of a sudden. They were the favorites after that. Giannis Antetokounmpo does not want to play alongside the players that he has to run through every year. He wants to defeat them. There's an old adage, you got to beat the best to be the best. But when the best all come together, who are you beating? For those Jordan enthusiasts who always say, well, Jordan is the best player of all time, and this, that, and the other. And then you got the old school basketball players that want to say, what about Wilt Chamberlain? The joke has always been, well, Wilt Chamberlain was playing against plumbers and milkmen. These unathletic players who probably don't deserve to be on the same floor as him because he was freakishly athletic. He was different. He was 7 feet tall. He could dunk the ball without having to even jump. He's the reason that the court is 10 feet tall now. Okay? When Wilt played, they wouldn't allow him to dunk. They changed the game so that he couldn't dominate. But it made the game more competitive. Give everybody else a chance. Something has to be done. Otherwise, we're going to keep on seeing the best players go to the same teams. Remember, there are 30 teams in the league. It is horrendous that only 2 or 3 teams are considered title contenders. And what's worse is only those 2 or 3 teams always make it. I don't know why that doesn't disturb anybody else. Now, I brought his name up earlier, LeBron James. And right now, he also got somebody in the buyout market. Now, LeBron James, in case you don't know, he's the man in the middle right here, number 23. Let me tell you something about LeBron James. Does he have the best reputation? No. That's his own fault, though. I'm not going to talk about that too much, though. Standing next to him, to his right, Anthony Davis, the brow. They just won a championship. Last year's title was won against my Miami Heat. These 2 players, alongside the rest of the team, they won a championship. They just added Andre Drummond. Now, here's the thing. The team changed a lot since last year, and they lost a lot of depth, especially at the center position, and Andre Drummond is addressing that for them. He wasn't brought onto the team because he wants to win a championship or a ring. Yes, they were already favorites to get to the title. Whatever. That's fine. But that team is like Swiss cheese. There's so many holes in that team's, not only in that starting 5, but in the bench. It's horrendous. Like, we've seen them play without AD. We've seen them play without LeBron. We've seen them play without them both. That team is garbage. It's horrible. We've seen the Brooklyn Nets play without 2 of their 3 best players. They're still running through the East like nothing stopped. That's what happens when you got 3 MVP caliber players. Now, I'm not saying that LeBron isn't MVP caliber right now, but his age is beginning to show. It's beginning to show, which is actually quite amazing. For 18 years in the league and it's just starting to show, that's amazing. But he's not the MVP. Not anymore. There are too many good players in the league now, and they're flourishing as he is beginning to diminish slightly. My point is, when you have something like the buyout market and you have players who want to win a title more than they want to be competitive, they're going to join on the same teams. Remember, 30 teams. 30. And only 3 teams are considered title contenders. That's pathetic. And it shouldn't be a thing. You know, I'm not a Michael Jordan fan, but one thing I can always say is, while I'm not a fan of his, I respect him. He didn't want to join other teams. He didn't want to. I'll put it this way. One thing you would never see Michael Jordan do is be friends with somebody during the regular season. Yeah. Off the court and during the off season, yeah, we'd be best of friends. We can play ball and go golfing and do whatever he did. You know, him and Charles Barkley were best friends for the longest time. You know, he didn't want to play with Chuck. He wanted to beat Chuck, and he beat Chuck on a regular basis. Poor Chuck. Actually, poor 90s basketball, because if Michael Jordan not been there, a lot of the greatest players during that era would have gotten titles. Just keeping it real with you. Another thing, you never would have saw Michael Jordan sharing a court with Isaiah Thomas. As a matter of fact, the one time they were supposed to share a court together, Michael Jordan refused to play on the dream team if Isaiah Thomas was going to be on that team. That's the reason Isaiah Thomas was not on that team. That's why Christian Laettner was there. Christian Laettner was on the dream team because Jordan refused to play next to Isaiah Thomas. He didn't mind playing on the same court as Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Those guys were on their way out already. Like, they were still good, but they weren't at the top of the games anymore. He knew he could beat them. His number one was getting through Detroit at that time. He didn't want to play. He didn't want to play with Isaiah Thomas. He wants to go through Isaiah Thomas. the latest thing I've heard as of late, and I'm praying that it's not true, is that LeBron James has been buddy and talking, chopping it up with and recruiting. And this is the thing: the players do recruit each other nowadays, which is really terrible for the league. He's been trying to recruit Stephen Curry. If this happens, I might not watch basketball until both of them retire, because it's already unfair. Nobody wants to watch somebody who is constantly in the greatest of all time conversation play with the greatest shooter of not only this generation, but probably the world's ever seen. Nobody wants to see that. That isn't fair to the rest of the league. Now, despite the fact that Utah, the Jazz, are the best team in the West right now, they're getting no press. But you know what? I think they like it that way. They're going to be the team with the best record and be an underdog. I think they like that. That's good. They get respect for playing well, but when it comes down to it, they don't have enough firepower or star power to actually take home the championship. I hope they do well. Actually, matter of fact, I want them to come out of the West, but it probably won't happen. Just keep it 100. It's probably just not going to happen. But you know what? Let me get off of that, because I can go on about that all day long. Matter of fact, I have been for the last few days, and it's been exhausting. So I just had to get it off my chest. Adam Silver, I do not envy your job, because now you have to go through the Players Association, and you have to try to fix this. The reason I used to love, God rest his soul, I used to love David Stern is because he would take into his own hands. There was a trade that was supposed to happen that would have sent Chris Paul to the Los Angeles Lakers to play with Kobe Bryant. David Stern said, no, I'm not going to have this. Kobe Bryant is one of this league's absolute best. You think basketball, you think Kobe Bryant at the time. Chris Paul was he wasn't upcoming. He was already an all-star. He was a cornerstone of a team. He said, no, you two cannot play together. This has to be separated. We have to make sure that David Stern was good for one thing. He made sure that the talent was spread across the league. David Stern, you got a lot of work to do. Those are some big shoes you got to fill. And right now, while monetarily the league is flourishing, competitiveness is at an all-time low. Argue with me if you want to. I don't care. The integrity of the game, 100% compromised, and it's ugly. So let me switch gears. I'm gonna stay with basketball, but something that makes me a little more happy. You know, the biomarker wasn't all bad, but you know, it's okay. Now the trade deadline, specifically for my team, was gorgeous, and let me show you why. For my Miami Heat fans, Christmas came early this year. Okay? Understand something. Christmas came early. We already knew he didn't want to be in Houston, and he wouldn't stay in Indiana because, you know, he was looking for a bigger contract. You know, he wanted to be somewhere where he wanted to be, and Miami is where he wanted to be. We knew that when free agency came around, he was coming to Miami no matter what. Victor Oladipo was traded for pretty much nothing to Miami. It's like, I mean, I can't blame Houston for this, because it's like, you know what? We can lose them for nothing, or we can try to get something. And they got next to nothing, but I guess they got something. I think they got like a second round pick or something in like 2027 or something. I forget what they got. It really don't matter, because we're going to re-sign Victor Oladipo to a nice size contract next year. And the funny part was, we were looking at getting Kyle Lowry, and because, you know, we need another ball handler to help Goran Dragic out. And Victor Oladipo is one of the best combo guards in the league. For those who don't know what a combo guard is, he can play the 1 or the 2. He can handle the ball. He can be a facilitator. He can get his own shot. He gives us more offensive firepower, and he's one of the best two-way defenders at the 2-guard spot in the league when healthy. Like, literally, he's not even 100% healthy right now. The man is like pretty much averaging 20 points in, like, with 20 points, 4 boards, and 3 assists. That he's not even healthy 100%. He's not even back yet. I'd love to see like when he's actually back, it's gonna be great. So he's gonna help us push, you know, in the East for this year, and going forward next year, it's gonna be a great year for us. That's something that I'm very excited about. Also, adding Victor Oladipo makes us officially Team Wakanda, as we now have 6 players in our rotation of all who all of Nigerian descent. So Team Wakanda. That's what I call us now, Team Wakanda. So it's for all those like myself, those Miami Heat fans, we had a pretty good trade deadline, and I'm not gonna lie to you though. In the buyout market, I kind of wanted LaMarcus Aldridge, because if you look at my team, we're not a super team of any sort. We're a collection of players who play both sides of the ball. Defense, we hit harder than anything else. We don't have a single all-star to our name right now, and LaMarcus Aldridge would have been useful for us because he'd been able to be competitive. He would have been used, at a pretty good, his usage would not have been as high as it was in San Antonio per se, but that 15 and 8 off the bench would have been great for us and for himself, because that puts him in a position to actually win. I believe because of New Jersey's, I'm sorry, I keep calling them New Jersey, but Brooklyn, whatever, because they're so top heavy, even though they just added Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge to their team, my Miami Heat are so intense defensively, I would like to see them play against a team with that much firepower on offense. Because I am a true believer that defense wins championships. Offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. Okay? No team has ever won a championship without playing defense. No matter how much firepower they had on offense, they had to play defense at some point to get that far. Unless their competition was absolute trash and couldn't play either side of the ball, so it didn't matter. So, and I doubt that's ever actually happened for real. And if it has, correct me. I don't really care. It doesn't make me any difference. So, the best news came. Another player I wanted was Lonzo Ball, but he's not going anywhere. He will be in New Orleans. He's probably going to test free agency. And I already talked about that last episode, but Lonzo Ball is going to be staying put in New Orleans. And personally, I'm kind of hoping that he does decide to come to Miami. The thing is, he's going to command like $20 million a year. And I'll be real with you, he's not worth that much at the moment. I probably wouldn't give him more than 12 to 15. Like 15 is being generous. But, he wants a long-term contract, as he should. The market's going to be kind of weak next year in free agency. And he's going to command quite a bit of money. Some offers are going to be thrown at him. Some things are going to get matched. Some things might not get matched. Someone's definitely going to overpay for him. And, hopefully my team isn't foolish enough to do that. Because we have a lot of good assets. We have a lot of good players, young players who were and were not drafted. And we just added Victor Oladipo to that mix. So we're going to do our thing. So before I wrap this up, I always got to give you a hot take. And my hot take for this week is a two-parter. I said it earlier, and I alluded to it earlier as well. The hot take for this week is, in the NBA Finals, assuming the Brooklyn Nets meet the Los Angeles Lakers, if the teams are both 100% healthy, Brooklyn takes it in 6. If the teams are not 100% healthy, Brooklyn takes it in 5. I think it's a foregone conclusion this year that the Brooklyn Nets, if they get out of the East, which they should, they're going to win no matter who they play in the finals. They win. The deck is stacked entirely too high. The other part of this hot take I alluded to earlier. In the very near future, and I'm talking the next 5 years, we're going to see a significant change in the way the buyout market and the trade deadline works. We're going to see restrictions placed on teams being able to have X amount of players and star players, because we're going to have some sort of competitive nature return to the league. With all these players joining the same team, it's making for an inferior product across the league. Remember, you got to have 30 competitive teams. My question to you all is, just ask yourself, if you watch basketball, would you rather see 30 competitive teams or 2 or 3 teams full of all-stars go at it and whoever wins, wins? Just a question to be asked. But that's my time, folks. This has been another episode of Hot Takes. I've been Marcus. Peace out, y'all. Until next week.